Welcome to Off Leash and Unfiltered. Trigger warning, I'm Katie Pepe, delivering the truth in dog training. Hey guys, Katie Pepe, Diamond K9 Dog Training, back with another Off Leash and Unfiltered. Today, I thought we'd talk a little bit about what is e-collar training. So if you've followed me for a while, if you've been listening to the podcast, or certainly if you follow me on social media, you know that I do a lot of e-collar training. And if you haven't been following me for a while, you may have no idea what I'm talking about. You may have no idea what an e-collar is. Sometimes when I say e-collar, people think of those big collars they give you at the vet, like when your dog has stitches or just had some kind of procedure and they don't want them, digging at it, biting at it. They put that big collar on them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an electronic collar, a remote collar. Some people call it a shock collar, which it is, but it's not my favorite term because it kind of gives you the impression that we can only do one thing with it, and that is make the dog really uncomfortable. We certainly can do that, but that's not all it does. It does so many things. And the reason I want to talk about this today is for that reason. A lot of people have no idea what I'm talking about when I say e-collar, and, so a certain population doesn't even know what an e-collar is at all. And then if you take the rest of the population, the people that have heard of an e-collar, there's a big percentage of those people that have this preconceived notion about what it is because there's so much false information out there. The narrative out there is primarily that e-collars are bad and they're harmful and that sort of thing. So most people are extremely, extremely ignorant when it comes to the e-collar, and I don't say that to be nasty. Like, people really just don't know. So it's like, let's talk about it a little bit so that I can kind of educate people about what an e-collar really is. And I think there's a ton of curiosity out there about it for the people that aren't sure. But I want to just talk to you a little bit about what the e-collar is, what we do with it, and how it can dramatically improve your life. So there's lots of different ways to train a dog, right? And one of the biggest fads in recent history is like the clicker training, right? And I'm extremely pro clicker, for your information, just so you know. Clicker's amazing. But the clicker doesn't train the dog, okay? So people think that clicker training is like some kind of black magic that just makes the dog want to listen, and it is not. It is not. So all the clicker is, and this is relevant because I just want to talk to you a little bit about the different types of training here. Clicker training, all the clicker is supposed to really do in proper clicker training is point things out to the dog that they did correctly. Okay, so the clicker is essentially the same thing when you click it. It's the same thing as you saying good or yes or whatever your word might be, right? So just instead of using a word, you're using a click. And there are a lot of advantages to that, and I'm not going to get into why it's better, in my opinion, than a verbal marker. But I just want you to understand that's what it does, right? So there's only one way to train a dog, and that is to train it. There aren't really 100 different ways to train a dog, right? You have to know how to increase behaviors and how to decrease behaviors, right? And it doesn't matter what tool you're using or tools. Those are the things you have to know how to do, and it doesn't matter what you use to do it. But ideally, hopefully, you use whatever the most effective tool is for you in your situation. And I got to tell you, by and large, the most practical tool, the most efficient, effective, practical tool for the vast majority of people is an e-collar. So it's not that you can't clicker train, right? You can. But the other thing we have to consider is that the clicker is limited in what it can do because it can only point out things that the dog did well. Now, you could also use it to point out things the dog did not well, but you can't use it for both. It has to have a clear meaning to the dog. And then you follow it up with something. So generally speaking, we click and then we deliver food, right? And that points out to the dog what they did well and that food is coming. And then we reward and hopefully increase that behavior. That's how that works. With an e-collar, we actually have the ability to both increase and decrease behaviors, which is special. Okay? So if you're using a really high-end modern unit like we do here at the training facility, we use e-collar technologies models, and that is the model that most trainers use, not all. This particular unit gives you the ability to be super, super soft and gentle. You can whisper with this e-collar, which a lot of people don't know. But I can literally just very gently tap a dog on the shoulder with this. It goes from level 1 to a level 100. Okay, so a level 1, most dogs don't even notice. I can't feel this unit on my own skin, usually until a level 12, just to give you some perspective. So level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I do not feel those. Okay, and then a level 12 just feels like a gentle tingle, almost like a fly crawling across your skin. I know, pretty gross, not what you want to think of, but that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like little tiny feet walking across your hand. So it can be super gentle. So I can whisper with this unit, I can yell with this unit. And it's so important if you really want to be effective and be able to train a dog no matter what their personality, no matter what the situation is. If they're in a situation where they're excited, they're in a situation where they're scared, that sort of thing. You need to have something that's adjustable. You need to have that wide spectrum of intensity. So you can be very low, very gentle, middle of the road, high, very high, just depending on what's going on and what kind of dog you have. So I love this unit for that reason, is it gives us all that flexibility and versatility. It's an amazing, amazing unit. And as a side note, it is also waterproof and comes with a 2-year warranty, and their customer service is absolutely phenomenal. So just want to throw that in there. Ecollar Technologies is amazing. So all that being said, that's why this is such a great tool. The flexibility, the versatility. I can adjust my intensity to whatever I need. I can increase behaviors and motivate the dog. I can decrease behaviors by making, attaching uncomfortable consequences to them. So this is an all-around fantastic tool. You can train a dog with nothing else but the e-collar. Now, I don't necessarily recommend doing that. I use food a lot of the time in conjunction with the e-collar, right? If you have a dog that's food-driven, why miss out on the opportunity to naturally increase behaviors and increase enthusiasm around doing the behaviors by using some food? I have no problem with that. I think that's great. Use food. But eventually you want to move away from it, because if you don't, you're going to be reliant on it. Okay, so I use lots of food in the beginning when I'm teaching a dog how to do something. But at some point, there needs to be an expectation that the dog does it, whether there's food or not. Right? Because not only are you not always going to have food, but if you're reliant on it, then you're ultimately going to put yourself in a position where you are in a game of tug of war with the environment. So the dog is always weighing food or squirrel, right? Food or other dog. Should I get the food or go chase the chipmunk? So it remains optional. So you have to have the ability to use aversive control in conjunction with whatever positive stuff you might have done with the dog. Because without that, everything remains optional. And so this tool gives us the ability and I don't like to use scientific terms. I really don't. I don't think it's important. I don't think most people understand it. And frankly, they shouldn't understand it because the truth is it doesn't make a ton of sense. But if you want to talk about increasing behaviors, right, we have the negative reinforcement ability with this tool. So here's an example. Now, a lot of people think you can't use these on fearful dogs, right? But this is like the best tool for a fearful dog. So with proper training, with a leash on the dog and an e-collar on the dog, I can put this e-collar on a very low level, right? Whispering. And I can teach this fearful dog who doesn't want to come to me because they're afraid of me that this e-collar sensation turns on, and I can pull my leash, and when I get them to me, I can shut that e-collar off. And now I can do that over and over again, and they can start to learn that when they feel this thing come on, they need to come to me and it shuts off. So now I become less scary, right? Because now this is still low, but it turns on when they're away from me, shuts off when they get to me. Now once they understand that and we've laid a foundation and we've done lots of repetition, I can now bump it up if I have to, so that I don't have to keep yanking the dog with the leash. And now guess what? Now they're voluntarily coming to me, right? And I don't have to light them up like a Christmas tree because I have 100 levels. I can just find whatever level is just enough to convince them they should come to me. So now I have a dog that was terrified of me who will come to me with no problem. And then guess what happens? They're not scared of me anymore. So it's a really cool training tool with a lot more capability than people realize. But the fact of the matter is, without accountability, you're always in a tug of war with the environment, guys. And that's just normal. It's not because your dog's stubborn. It's just normal. So what we typically do with our e-collar training, like I said, a lot of times we use food early on in the beginning, right? First few days of a board and train. But we do lots of repetition on those really low whisper levels. So we just start teaching the dog. This turns on when I say sit, and it turns off when your butt hits the floor. It turns on when I say sit. It turns off when your butt hits the floor, right? And we do that same thing with the down command, and the same thing with the place command. The same thing with the come command, recall, right? And we tie it into heel as well. So when the dog's not in heel position, it turns on. I'll guide them back to the heel position, and I shut it off. And dogs pick up on this very, very quickly. This physical layer of communication, it comes very natural to most dogs. They learn it super fast in most cases, right? If you have a more nervy, anxious dog, sometimes they need more repetition. And that's okay. You can do all the repetition you need to. But it's a very, very effective training tool. And then once we've got that foundation laid, that's what we call the conditioning phase. Again, now we have a tool that when we need to, we can just bump it up a little bit, right? So now you say place, dog ignores you. You look for the level that is just enough to motivate them to prioritize you, right? So maybe they see the cat playing with something on the other side of the room, and they pay more attention than going to their place cot, right? So now you look for the level that your dog goes, oh yeah, what did you want me to do? And then you can help them if they need help, right? So I'm not going to try to teach you how to do the full e-collar training on a podcast. That would be silly. But I want you to have an idea what it looks like. Because so many people have no clue what it is, or they think it's bad. And it's not. Right? And even once you start bumping your level up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be uncomfortable. It might be. Sometimes it's going to be. Why? Because sometimes your dog isn't going to listen unless you make it uncomfortable not to listen. And that's just the truth. And that's what I do. I tell the truth. So sue me. Okay? But a lot of the time, that's not the case. So, for instance, I did a go-home session yesterday. Dog's actually kind of a higher dog. So he's usually working in like the teens, 20, maybe low 20s. But so let's say we're in the teens and we're on a 15 when things are calm. Things get a little more exciting and we're out at the park or whatever. I now might need a 35 to a 40 for this dog in most cases. And it's not because I'm trying to be more meaningful. It's not because I'm trying to make him uncomfortable. It's because when we're in that environment, a 40 feels the same to him as a 15 did at home that morning when things were quiet. So that's the nature of it. It adjusts to the dog. That's e-collar training. We listen to the dog. So as your dog becomes aroused or excited, your level has to go up or they will not notice it. So, and it's different for every dog. Some dogs have a very tight window and it doesn't change a ton. But a lot of dogs have huge peaks and valleys, huge contrast, right? So maybe single digits when things are calm, and they might be 40, 50, 60 when you go to a Home Depot, especially if they're uneasy and they're anxious and nervy. So that makes the number go up too, because the dog is so concerned about that noise over there, that guy over there, that they don't feel the physical sensation of the e-collar. Right? So it's not that we're turning it up to fry the dog, quote unquote, right? Because that's what people will say. It's like, no, you turn it up to break through the distraction. And the dog will tell you what that level is. And then, yes, of course, we do punish things with the e-collar too. So I get a lot of dogs in for resource guarding. I get a lot of dogs in that bark and growl at people. Guess what? I punish those behaviors with the e-collar. I mark those behaviors with a no. I turn my e-collar up to something I know will be very uncomfortable to that dog, and I tap the button. And usually after doing that 2, 3, maybe 4 times, those behaviors go away. So people can tell me I'm mean for doing that. And you know what? I don't care. I don't care at all because I see the good that comes out of it. I see what's on the other side. I just take it all for granted because I know I've done it so many times. And the thing is, once you do that, just like the fearful dog scenario that I described and getting that dog to come to me, you know, if you have a dog that's nervous of strangers and barks and growls at them, and you put a stop to that behavior, well, now you can actually have that dog around strangers. And I'm not suggesting that you should let them put all kinds of pressure on the dog or touch the dog. But now you can actually put that dog in situations that are going to get him used to it so he can learn to be more comfortable and confident around strangers. And you can't do that if they're losing their mind and barking, growling, and lunging at people, right? So this tool, guys, makes lives better, and it can make your life better. So it's my recommendation for nearly everybody. I mean, I just don't see any benefit to not using it, you know? And when I do occasionally, I don't get a lot of these people, but when I do get someone that says, oh, well, you know, do you have any training programs without the e-collar? You know, or I'm not real comfortable with the e-collar. Can we use something else? The answer is just no. And it's not that I have a problem with training without the e-collar. I just don't want to do it. Because why would I want to do that? It's like if I built houses for a living and someone asked me to do it without a drill or a power saw, I would tell them to go to hell. So this is the same thing. Like there's no amount of money you can pay me that makes me want to do that. Okay, it's not because I'm lazy. This tool requires skill. It requires repetition. It requires that you show the dog what to do. It is not lazy. It is very effective and very efficient. That's not lazy. And I don't know why you would want to do things any other way. You know, and like I said, you can combine it with any number of things. So I still use other tools. I still use food. I use a bonker sometimes to punish behaviors instead of the e-collar. Right? So I'm not married to only using the e-collar, but especially if you want to take the leash off, boy, why would you ever trust a dog off leash without an e-collar? I don't care how good your dog is. They're a living organism. They make their own decisions. And it only takes one bad decision. It only takes one moment in time. So I'm not comfortable with that. No way. I'm not taking the leash off my dog without an e-collar, especially off property somewhere. Right? God forbid. Like I said, it only takes 1 second, one bad decision. Even if they're normally very good, behavior isn't set in stone. Behavior changes. Okay? The environment is unpredictable. Other people are unpredictable. And to an extent, whether you realize it or not, your dog is unpredictable. So they might do the same thing 100 times in a row and then do something different. And this gives you a safety net. Okay, now you can tap your dog on the shoulder from a half a mile away. You can whisper to your dog from a half a mile away. You can yell at your dog from a half a mile away, and you don't have to say anything. You essentially have a leash on your dog without a leash, if they've been properly trained with the e-collar, which is important. You can't just slap the collar on and think that your dog is going to know what to do with it. They won't. Okay, now if you've got some nuisance behaviors you want to knock out, that's much easier. There's still a correct way to do it, an efficient way to do it, and there's a wrong and inefficient way to do it. But much, much easier. Much less training involved. You just have to know how to form an association between the behavior and the consequence. Super easy. But if you're trying to get your dog to respond to the e-collar by doing something in particular, like coming when called, that's a training process, guys. Still not super complicated most of the time, but it is a training process. So we do teach the dog about the e-collar and what to do with it. Now, the other thing about the e-collar, right, is most of them have vibrate. They have vibrate, they have beep. And everybody wants to use those because those are nicer. Okay, well, let's just clear something up here. I don't use vibrate. I only use electric stimulation. Okay, sounds so mean, I know. I'm the ice queen. But so I'm conditioning a dog to an e-collar. And we're doing lots of low stimulation. And I'm teaching them how to come when called and sit and lay down on command. And I'm using these low levels just to teach them what it means. Right? And we're working one day and I accidentally hit the wrong button and I hit vibrate. Guess what happens? Dog hits the ceiling, guys. Dog jumps right out of their skin because vibrate is like serious stuff compared to this low stim. So get off your high horse thinking your vibrate is nice. You're not nicer than I am, fool. Okay, and the problem with vibrate besides that is that it's monotone. It doesn't go up and down. You have one level, just vibrates on or off, right? So remember what I talked about, your level and your intensity needing to change depending on the environment, depending on how your dog feels, depending on their state of mind. It's going to go up and down, up and down. You can't do that with vibrate, so it's going to be wrong most of the time. It's going to be way too much sometimes. And it's not going to be nearly enough when your dog chases the bunny or the deer or the other dog, whatever the case may be. So you really need the flexibility of the stimulation. So I just don't use vibrate. Now the beep comes in handy for a couple of things. You can use it as a marker before you correct your dog. But I actually use it to teach a recall, and I really like that. So it doesn't replace the accountability, right? If I beep my dog's collar and they don't come, there's a consequence for that still, right? Beep is not a consequence, just a noise. So I just teach the dog when I hit beep, they come to me. Great. That's cool. I have no problem with that. That way I don't have to yell. That's awesome. But if they don't come, there's still a consequence, just like there would be if I called my dog verbally. So, but lots of interesting ways you could use the beep, I suppose. And that's it. So I hope this has filled you in a little bit on e-collar training and kind of what we do with it and what it looks like and why I think it's so great. And why I really just don't train without it. After a dog's 5 or 6 months old, guys, like, they're ready for more. They're ready to learn this language of e-collar and tie it into everything they know. And man, does it really improve your bond and your relationship with your dog. You get to know them in a different way. You become more relevant. You start doing things together, right? When you're out together instead of like the dogs in their own world. It's so cool. And I really recommend it. Whether you use me or somebody else, make sure it's somebody with a good reputation, like someone that's used them. Look at their videos. They should show their work. Right? Speaking of, you can check out my videos on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Diamond Canine Dog Training. And if you have questions on anything, send me your questions. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer your questions. All right, guys. I hope you're all giving some thought now to e-collar training. And I've enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening, and I'll see y'all next time.